here, you are here, congratulations, welcome. We are talking about, let me get the linkity bits. Sharing the Google Doc that I have shared with everyone else. You are all editors on the doc. And one of the things that was a promise early in this year was that I would never have any homework or any prep that anybody had to do. And this is the only time I have broken it. But the reason why is what I have done is compiled the notes from the last 3 years, 4 years that Fuck Shit Up has been some kind of Fuck Shit Up group. I compiled all the notes together, put it in one place, asked everybody, I gave everyone like a month to go in and fuck it up. Make notes, what the hell does this mean? Delete this, this is old. Let me update the language here. I really like this part, etc. So then I've gone back through and pulled all those notes together into one place so that we can, I'm going to use the word finalize, but I mean it with like a lowercase f. So like barely finalize what would be an initial kind of mission, purpose, structure to whatever the hell this group is. So that David and I were talking earlier today, and ultimately this group should be internally run and managed. Somebody else should facilitate it. Someone else should be doing the administrative stuff, not your outside consultant person. Everyone who's in the group should be a general member of large who isn't in a chapter leadership position, isn't on a national leadership position, maybe was, but isn't now, so that a group of members at large can literally receive drafts of things that have come out of other committees or other task forces and fuck it up, ask questions that maybe got lost in kind of the sausage making. But it is also a group of completely random members at large who may also have thoughts or needs or concerns or ideas, and they need a place to talk and then come up with you don't have to do anything, but to come up with the idea of something as a result of a conversation that random members at large want, that then get placed out into the right places to see if this is something that needs to be pursued. So it could potentially go both ways. We're not there yet as a group, but we're getting there, right? So I am an outside diversity consultant that has been working with the organization for quite some time. Joe Beth, who just logged in, has stupidly volunteered to be the backup admin person for the group. So in sending texts and emails and reminders and nudges, I do as well, but I think I just get like universally blocked by the members of the group. So everybody likes Joe Beth better. So that has helped with communication. And the agreement this year, the time that was the most popular were Tuesdays at what comes out to being 11 to 1 o'clock Pacific time for most folks. Next year, we will do the same thing. What date, what time works for the most people. And then I will send out a doodle, which is an administrative free tool of kind of which Tuesday at 11 to 1 works best for the most people who could go. That's how we pick the times of the meetings. So that's Damien, since it's your kind of first time, that's some of the high level structure of the group. Do you have any thoughts, comments, or questions for me or anybody else that might be helpful?
No, I mean, I am a bartender by trade, obviously, but I haven't been a bartender in a long time. So I'm used to working in the big box and working in groups like this. So to problem solve, to troubleshoot, that's my literal specialty. So this all makes sense to me. This is, at least for this first 5 or 10 minutes, all cake to me, all makes sense. I'm along for the ride. I will be as boisterous and helpful as you want me to be, and I will be quiet when you want me to be as well. I don't fucking care either way. It's up to you.
Perfect. That's the perfect group. If generally, this time of year, as people who are working in the industry are revving up to what is referred to as a busy time of year, we are also kind of wrapping things down. And also I'm trying really hard to get y'all to think of other people to add to the group. The group is currently euphemistically referred to as the Fuck Shit Up Committee because it's quite clear marketing and advertising as to who we are looking for and what we mostly do. As far as the work today around the mission and the purpose, just saying fuck shit up really makes sense in this context. But outside of this context, it might be unclear. So that's why like institutionalizing the function of this group isn't dependent on my contract getting renewed or even an outside contractor generally, but it is actually an embedded practice connected to the diversity initiatives of all of the arms of USBG to have a group of members at large be able to really look at, refer to, punch holes in things, ask questions before anything gets finalized is a great way to check those kind of boundaries, look for bias. Any organization, not specific to bartenders, but any organization, it's challenging to rewrite things, wordsmith things, create new policies, new committees, et cetera. And so having somebody on the outside is a great way of kind of constantly checking that. And that has been a very important part of the diversity, equity, inclusion agenda for both the foundation and the guild. And so we're in like year 3 or 4. Time is confusing generally, and then COVID didn't help. So I'm really excited about the work that the group has been able to do. What's fun is, at least for me, is that as some members of the group kind of ebb and flow in participation around work schedules and stuff, every conversation that somebody at Fuck Shit Up has brought up has unanimously been accepted by the national board or is part of CHOPS now, or is now in conversation at the NCC. Everything is really happening, and sometimes it's hard to see that. There are, Damien, one other thing to kind of alert you to structure-wise, and then I'm assuming 15 after we can get started, is that Aaron Gregory Smith is almost always on as many of the calls as possible. Not necessarily as a verbal participant, although as kind of the vault of history and knowledge, it can be really helpful. But that also, having the executive director here allows the members at large to have a conversation that then the executive director understands the context of that conversation so that it never gets filtered through and then presented in a different way, right? So that's why the executive director is part of the group. There is usually at least the board liaison in the group, which this year is Raul. So similarly, to have a national board of directors member present for the conversation, it also can help the conversations that might happen after this on the national board level. And then usually the guild president and or foundation president are invited to attend. They don't have to attend. And the bulk of the conversation are all the regular fuck shit up members.
Got it. No, I mean, I'm Las Vegas for the last 16 years. So the history of the US, Aaron already knows who I am.
Yes.
He's like this motherfucker.
Perfect. That's the main requirement.
Yeah. Which is cool. So I'm very well versed in history. Aaron, glad you're here. I'm glad to learn all that, Jess. You'll get, when appropriate, you'll get some very strong opinions for us, because to me, in all of this, there's some, listen, I'm a white guy from the suburbs, so diversity isn't something I should champion ever, but how we run the system and operation of USBG, I'm not saying there's not a lot of hardworking people. There's a lot of people that are close friends, have been mentors to me. But we run this thing like bartenders run shit, and that is poorly for the most part over the last 30 years. A lot of great things, but there's some very easy answers. If we just looked at, to use kind of piggyback your example, if we looked at how Elks Club runs it, Honest Club, any type of club that's been around for 60, 70, 80 years, and they've had their trials and tribulations and things like that, but structurally in terms of their operation, how they run, we don't do anything like that. And I think that's like a massive problem, because whether you believe in those clubs, you're a part of those clubs, whatever your affiliations are in life, they've been around for 80 years. They're doing something right, 100 years, 200 years in some cases. So like structurally, I think we missed the ball colossally. Like I know in Las Vegas and probably while I'm here, Raul, like we would be doing things and the answers would be from like a bartender line level position. Like, this is how we're going to handle things. And I'm like, just from a general living in the corporate world for the last decade, like that's not how you can talk to people. That's not how you can execute things. That's not the best way to do things. Right. And so like, I would have to reverse things into, guys, if this happened at your casino job, at your corporate job, and they rolled this thing out this way, how would it be received? They'd be like, everybody would be mad. I go, this is no different. So like when you start to get into that leadership role, be it as high up the totem pole as Aaron, be it, Jessica, you and Joe Beth, doing, outside consulting and having your wealth of knowledge in the fields you've been in, whether you're a local director, national president, national, local, whatever the case may be. Once you step into that leadership role, you the beauty of it is you get to keep some of that bartender, but on some level you have to dust some of that bartender showing up late, not answering emails, not executing on a higher level. Some of that stuff's got to go by the wayside. That's kind of like part of growing up, in my opinion, but here nor there. I mean, the best thing about USBG is not just the amazing learning ground for spirits and mixology and championing this wonderful thing that we're a part of in terms of an industry, but also like how you can grow as an individual, professionally, personally, and just generally act like a fucking adult when you're supposed to. And I don't, because I use the F word every 3 seconds, so I get that. But
well, the F word is welcome. I'm here. And conveniently, Kiwanis and Rotary Club have both been clients of mine. And I would say that there is some stuff they're doing that's more jacked up than USBG. And there's stuff that the USBG is doing that is more jacked up, but they're different.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So, totally cool. So because Aaron, you have to go soon. So I have put the link in the chat for the Google Doc. For those of you that have done zero prep, you are as prepared as I told you would be. I promised there would be no homework, but I gave you an opportunity to do homework in case you wanted to flirt with me. You could have. You can also schedule a one-on-one with me if you want to chat about the group or the future, your involvement, other people, etc. So while you're opening the Google Doc, because we're going to spend most of our time in there, AGS, do you have any thoughts, comments, or announcements generally before you have to bounce to the next meeting?
I don't. I think today's topic is about the charter draft primarily.
Yes.
And then also about like how we're going to wrap up the year, how this group wants to wrap up the year.
In theory, mission-ish, wrapping up the year possibly. And then if there's time, because I always try to do 2 things instead of 1 thing at the meeting. After some conversations with different people, I've talked to David a little bit about this. He's at work, but he knows that this is coming. But I'm interested in seeing if Fuck Shit Up would like to do some kind of initial conversation that I'm calling Fuck Around and Find Out, which is a little bit more guidance and language for chapter leaders that like you don't have to embezzle money or kill somebody to be removed from a chapter leadership position. But what would the Fuck Shit Up committee think fucking around looks like if it's not illegal and it doesn't break a policy? You're just kind of a dick. How do you define what fucking around is, and then what find out means? That's the bonus conversation. If we can get through charter stuff first. See, I'm teasing.
Yeah, so that framework of like ethical and moral, right? Like what is those boundaries aren't super clearly defined, and we find ourselves in those gray areas a lot. Like, should a chapter officer be threatening to like shut down their entire chapter just because they're mad about something? Probably not. That would be a fuck around situation.
But what's scary is that technically right now, the way that the power is distributed within the chapter leadership, if that person is president, treasurer, and secretary, which is unfortunately common when you don't have a lot of people in executive leadership, they could just shut down the chapter because somebody broke up with them. So fuck around, find out. That is the teaser, but we have to do the hard work first. Okay, HBS, I'm hearing no other announcements from you, correct?
No.
Okay, then you get to hang out for 10 more minutes and then we're gonna kick you out and upgrade to Raul when he gets here from a meeting. Madam President, Cole is in the house, probably does not have any announcements, is muted and has the video off. But with all due respect, I like to defer to Madam President in case there are any announcements or anything you have. And you're wearing a shirt. I like how this is starting out. Madam President, do you have any thoughts, comments, or anything?
No, I don't really have anything to add. Damien, I appreciate you being here. I thank you for
Thanks
taking
for
the
having
time to hop into this little group. Being that this is supposed to be a group of sort of non-leaders, I kind of take a similar tack to Aaron in this space where I try to be mostly a fly on the wall. Although I did go in and take a real hatchet to the values and mission statement at Jess's gentle prodding. And I was a little worried that this was something that had been like lovingly crafted by all the members of this group. It turns out it was just like a landing place for all of the ideas that have percolated for the last few years. So the hatchet was the appropriate response rather than the gentle massage that I was worried y'all were looking for. But I'm here. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me directly. Otherwise, I'll probably just stay off camera on mute and just quietly observe from the sidelines.
Fantastic. And a hatchet was completely appropriate. Although if you would like to go back into the Wayback Machine, 4 years ago, you and Ingrid and somebody else, I think maybe Harry, were the ones that did most of that writing. And by that, I mean Ingrid. So now 4 years later, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, now it makes sense. So welcome to hatchets. All right. Okay, that should have been enough time in theory for people to get the Google Sheet up. Jo Beth, I am going to ask you to be co-host because I know Raul is supposed to be coming in at half hour because he had another meeting. Just in case.
He's on.
Oh, he's already here?
Yep.
Oh, great. Look, that's amazing. Well, you're co-host anyway. If there are, I don't see Raul anywhere.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was Reza, not Raul. And then Jason is supposed to be on here too.
Yeah,
I'll send another text.
Okay, no worries. They can come when they come, but you are co-hosty, so you have the ability to let people in from the waiting room just in case extra eyeballs. And again, Jo Beth, I know that you're like, I really suck at this and I've had a shitty month. You are an extra set of texting and eyeballs, and I'm grateful for it. And don't make it sound like a hard job because you might someday want to step down and give it to someone else. So thank you very much. Okay, so you hopefully are in the Google Doc. According to the Google Doc, there are 5 of you currently in the Google Doc. Now you know how to flirt with me. So what we did, and we've kind of already touched on this, is that I compiled all the information together over the last several years, put it into one place. Cole took a hatchet to it. Aaron also took a hatchet to it. So we have the executive director and the president of the national board being like, nope, yep, this is not current, this is the current, etc. So now what I want us to be able to do, first off, I don't want to assume that everybody just knows what a charter is. So I'm going to do a little teeny tiny TED talk while some of you are looking at this document for the very first time. But ultimately, when we start talking about, like, let's take something light, like white supremacy. So how white supremacy shows up in associations, 1 is Robert's Rules of Order, 2, it's most of our election practices, and 3, it's mostly bylaws and constitution related. It's just embedded in there. So if we're going to fuck shit up, then what we have to do is really be able to understand and name what's happening. Now, one way of doing that is to play the game. The other way involves like nuclear weapons. So nuclear weaponizing a constitution and bylaws is very hard, largely due to tax code. So what we are doing is we are coming up with a charter inside of a system that can be utilized for a lot of harm so that we can do some good shit with it. So one of those things is a charter. So what a charter physically does is it allows any kind of subgroup, and language really matters when we start talking about constitutions and bylaws and stuff. So I'm going to call it a subgroup, but a task force is very different than a committee, is very different than a council. And these things, these entities do different things. They report to different places in a national board or regionally or even on a chapter level. Sometimes they can vote. Sometimes they can't vote. Sometimes they get disbanded. There's a way that they get disbanded. Sometimes they hang out. So for fuck shit up, none of that has been decided other than nobody wants this to go away. And I'm really trying to lead the charge of institutionalizing it so that if it were to go away, at minimum, the national board would have to like publicly vote to make this go away. And the national board are representatives of the members, right? Instead of it just stop meeting. When we think if we do like a parallel to Congress, there's a lot of bills that get put on the congressional floor and they never get brought up to vote. So they go to the congressional floor to die, but that is also the location where they could be voted on and passed, right? So this is all an exquisitely designed system. We can't change the entire system right now. So we are writing a charter. And the idea of the charter is to figure out how to clearly articulate what is this group, what does this group do, who can be on this group, who cannot be on this group, and then if we wanted to get particular, how do we add more people or remove people? That's basically what a charter does so that it's not just Jess's pet project. So I compiled all the notes from the last 4 years around kind of what is the purpose of this group. It has been called a number of things over the years. Fuck shit up is kind of where it's stuck. It was once called the Advisory Council. Bridge sometimes gets used. Bridge is kind of the acronym for the DEI initiative within USBG. Bridge stands for belonging, representing, inclusion, diversity, generosity, and encouragement, and it spells a noun. You know how much we love that. So then the draft of the purpose, those 3 bullets, is kind of what does it do? The mission is a single sentence. The kind of charter example gets to a little bit more of those specifics. So David and I were having a conversation earlier today on our one-on-one about, he was like, I really want to come back next year. I'm paraphrasing because he's at work, but I really want to come back next year, but I am a member of my chapter leadership team and I don't want to do that if it's going to cause a problem. And so what I said is that we are shooting for eventually a group of members at large that is self-facilitated, self-run, self-administered, and holds all this other shit accountable. That's what we're shooting for. We are not there yet. So even though David is on chapter leadership, we want to take into account how many people in chapter leadership, because we don't want it just to be another NCC. We already have an NCC. So the things that we develop or y'all decide now is just a draft, right? We're shooting for where we're going to get. I hope we get there within a year, maybe 2 max, but it is a self-fulfilling group. The executive director, the national board president, and a board liaison member can be a member of that. And maybe you want an outside consultant, maybe you don't, but I don't have to drive the ship. But we're not quite there yet as far as people understanding what it is or what it's doing, or people stepping up, wanting to facilitate and do that. So we're still kind of in the infancy stage, and that's fine. So I gave you some examples, and then I compiled some notes so that I thought what we could do is talk about what is currently there, but then I really want you to look at some of these notes about what Fuck Shit Up does. If you keep scrolling, they're all bolded in hot pink. How does this committee actually work? What is the actual time commitment? Who can be on the committee? Who can't or who shouldn't be on the committee? There's no answers there yet because we haven't really come up with them. How are people recruited or removed? And then I included some specifics just for reference. So the updated USBG vision, mission, value statement, the community bridge project statement, as well as the current advisory group kind of charter language. So that's what's all in one single place. And then my hope is on today's call, we kind of come to a place of the people who are in attendance. I'm going to give this recording out to the people who were not in attendance. They will more than likely not read it, probably, right? But at least they had the opportunity. And then from there, that information can then go to the national board, and the national board can have a conversation about what is the Fuck Shit Up. Should it be called the Fuck Shit Up, or just like euphemistically referred to as the Fuck Shit Up committee? And how does it fit in with other committees and task force and things like that? So that's kind of the overarching goal for today. The meetings usually are 2 hours long, and my hope is if we spend less than 2 hours on this topic, then we get to do at least the beginning of the fuck around and find out conversation. Thoughts, comments, or questions about today, what we're doing, the Google Sheet in general? Those of you that can't see the Google Sheet, you're welcome to unmute and tell me thoughts and comments, and we will try to put everything around there together.
Do you want to go down the list? Here's Raul. Do you want to go down the list of items, or can we just, like, one thing that I had thought of, like, who can't or shouldn't be on the committee is somebody who within, let's say, the past year or two has had to be disciplined or spoken to by the resolutions committee.
Okay. Someone in.
I don't know what kind of time frame we want to put on that, but I would say at least a year or two personally.
Conversation within a year or two. Great, I typed that in. We'll see what happens. David, I also just sent you a text message just in case that I realized I am fucking up the pronunciation of your name. Apologize. Great. So Joe Beth, to the structure question. One, not everybody can look at this Google Sheet, and so I wanted to give them an
Right, okay.
opportunity to check in. And then I thought, to your point, we would start at the end and go through the questions and just see if we're all on the same page, and then go back up and see if there's any wordsmithing hatchet work that needs to happen to the draft. The
Perfect.
starting place has been hatcheted and pulled from a lot of notes, so no pressure on y'all loving it and no pressure on you having to change it. It's just where we're at in the conversation. So I'm not seeing any chats and I'm not seeing any text. So why don't we start at oh wait, there Raul just joined us. Let me put the link back in the chat just in case, Raul, you don't have it open. I know you've already kind of destroyed it, but
yeah, I put some input in there.
yeah, it was great input. So I really appreciate it. Okay. Cole saying it might be worth checking with ResCom on a case-by-case basis. Not everyone who we've helped navigate the resolution process would make a poor candidate for FSU. That is true. I would also say functionally, and this is not documented anywhere, this is just kind of what we have been doing. But anybody who gets suggested for the committee is supposed to currently have a one-on-one with me. And then Aaron, who's kind of the keeper of all the things that I don't know about. I run the name through by Aaron. I would imagine that Aaron knows what's going through resolutions committee and or any other kind of arm of either the foundation or the guild. And so if that's a no, then that's a no. But so far they're like, that's a perfectly cantankerous person. Yes, go for that. So I don't know if that's helpful or we should probably document that in some kind of manner. Great. So if we stick to who can't or who shouldn't be on the committee, this fuck shit up committee, are there any other kind of collective thoughts or ideas that you can come up with that I need to note here? So we're kind of having a conversation. This is me attempting to talk less.
I like what Cole just sent in the chat, like looking at everything for a case by case basis, because not everybody, and this is 100% Cole's idea, right? Not everybody who's been through that process is a poor candidate, right? So maybe, looking at their file, if you will, right, to put it plainly, before saying, no, they can't be, like, just because they were in the resolution situation doesn't mean they can't be in. Like, what was the resolution? What was the problem? What was the issue? Does that totally just, so I like what Joe Beth said. I agree. That's a great place to look, right? It's like checking a resume. Is that the end all be all, right, for that situation?
Great.
Well, but I also feel like that's why I had the time frame on there. Not like if you've
Yes.
ever been part of it, you can't do it. But like
Correct.
if it's been within a year, maybe
Sure.
we
Sure.
take that.
Yep.
Excellent.
Because regardless, if they're in part of that, somebody had an issue with that person. And so I feel like that should be very much taken into contact, or sometimes the words still get away from me. Stupid COVID brain.
No, no, I
Like I used to
I'm
know that
picking up.
word that I was looking for.
I'm picking
It's
up what you're laying down.
It's also the case that, like, Joe Beth, to use the language you just used, if X had a concern with Y, X is also involved in ResCom. So then this is an example of how wording matters. So then if you say in the final, if you say someone who can't be a member is someone who's involved in ResCom, were they on the committee? Were they
Well,
the
but that's
person?
what I said has been like disciplined or whatever the verbiage is for that.
Right,
So
no,
not like the person making the complaint,
Right.
but
I'm
the complainant.
understanding. I'm using it as
Oh.
an example as we look at wording, right? So like sometimes it's I'm just using it as an example. Sometimes it's really easy to say, well, if they've been in ResCom, they're out. Well, if they've been in ResCom, they're out unless approved, right? But we have to be careful because some people are involved in ResCom as a committee member, right? Like that's their
Right.
volunteer role. Sometimes they're the person filing the thing. Sometimes they're the target of the thing being filed. So that's why, unfortunately, wording matters. But yeah, so great example. Anybody, any other contexts that you can think of can't or shouldn't? I have one that I will add, and this is again me trying to not talk much. Somebody who doesn't or can't or isn't capable of responding to emails, texts, doodle polls, can't attend meetings or doesn't like to attend meetings. There is a time and responsible obligation. And if you can't do that, then you can't be on the committee. Often we don't articulate that, but it would be helpful to.
I concur with that fully. I mean, and everybody's schedule is different. The food and beverage industry, your schedule is constantly probably changing, and new things, new opportunities, stuff comes up. But I think there does have to be an accountability when it comes to that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. What that is, I'm not sure because I don't know. Again, I'm new, day one for this silo, but I agree there has to be some accountability, because if you have 20, 30 people on the email and it's the same 10 people showing up over and over and over and pushing the envelope, it's not that we don't want those other 20 people there, but like we might as well take you off the list and try again next year or 6 months from now, or whatever the case may be, because there's other people out there that maybe don't know this opportunity exists, could be given the opportunity, and not that they would do a better, worse job or otherwise, they just showing up is half the battle, right?
Mhm.
So
All right. I'm checking the chat again. Okay, so then quickie conversation about how are people recruited and or removed? So how are they brought in or how are they removed? So for those of you that are just joining, Damien is joining us and this is his very first meeting. And what a great example of somebody else on Fuck Shit Up said, you should reach out to this person. So then in reaching out to this person, eventually, sometimes they email back. Sometimes they're super gung-ho and then I never hear from them again, right? But then Damien and I were able to connect. We're able to explain kind of what happened. And this is first go meeting. Last meeting, we had another person who that was their first meeting, but now because of work, they can't be in future meetings, but they're still on. Like they still want to be involved in case their work schedule changes. So that's kind of the recruitment, right? It's word of mouth. There is one check that Aaron does generally, like, yep, nope. And then we haven't had a nope yet. And then we haven't actually had to remove anybody yet because nobody has done anything like terrible. But there are a couple of people, and it was noted in here, someone added it in, that there are people who haven't responded, haven't attended, nor have they responded that they can't attend. And so someone added in, no call, no show 3 times in a row. Is that a time to be removed? So I thought we would spend a little bit of time talking about the removal. Honestly, I don't know that I don't know administratively if it matters, but I would say that if they haven't responded within a cycle, then it's not guaranteed. I ask everybody, do you still want to be on this group? And if I still don't hear from them, then I think that might make sense that they're not involved on the list moving forward. Because usually what ends up happening is people are very responsive or not. And the very responsive people will respond, I can't do this right now, but I'm still interested. But that's responsive. So, okay, great. Those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Especially those of you that have been here for a bit. What are your thoughts on recruiting people or removing people? And Reza, I know you're at work. I think you and Joe Beth have been on it since the longest. So I want to reach out to either of you first.
Sure, I'll chime in really quick. I'm actually driving to an appointment at noon, so I will be saying goodbye and logging off then. But briefly on this topic, and to underscore that G.I. Joe reference from Damien of knowing is half the battle, and the statement of, you know, if we're always waiting, because it's a democratic process, you know, in some way, if we're always waiting for a response for people who are no call, no shows consistently, then all they're doing is holding the rest of us who are doing something in whatever capacity back. So whether it's 3 times no call, no show, or whatever level of measurement of inactivity is, for sure, we cannot lag behind while just trying to be fair to everybody out of a voice. It's like, if you don't want to have a voice, then you shouldn't fucking get one. Right? At least not in this forum. So I strongly vote for coming up, or not vote. I speak on behalf of us defining some way or having a clause to say, look, man, just next year, you know, or come back another time when you're more capable, because the 11 of us, or however many the consensus is, are actively working on trying to get this kind of stuff done. And we're trying to be fair, but you're holding us back. And because I'm going to go back on mute, I think it should always be called fuck shit up for many reasons.
I don't disagree with that. Okay, so I added in a sentence, and somebody who is a brown cursor is also in here. So make sure that I'm putting things right. Anybody can be doing the Google sheet. It's not just me. But I changed it, Reza, to capture that. And then Joe Beth, I'll come for you for your thoughts since you've been on it for so long. The inactivity, I liked that language, Reza. Inactivity, 3 meetings in a row. A member can be removed or invited to come back next cycle. And usually the cycles are about a year, I think. Thoughts?
Yeah, I like it. I think there's got to be a level, like we all like want to be a part of everything, every class, every discussion, every trip, every like decision-making situation. We all want to be a part of it. And I don't even know if this matters or is a thing, but like, shouldn't there be some verbiage like at a certain point? Like I know for me, on the day that this is too much or this doesn't become a, you know, priority to be at the meetings, like I'll tap myself out before you have to throw me out. Like, I mean, should we lead? Can we lead with something like of that nature? Like, hey, like if you can't do it, there's no shame in that. Like, hey guys, thanks for everything. I've got to take 3 months off, 6 months off. I'm traveling to Bangladesh to do all the cocktails, right? Like we get it. Like, cool, go do that. Tell us about it in 6 months. Cause I like to think that most of the people in here are adults. And there should be some recognition of like like, I'm out, I'm tapping myself out before anybody has to tell me I haven't showed or called or emailed. I don't know. For whatever that's worth.
Great. Joe Beth, what about you? Since you have the most tenure on the committee, do you have any other thoughts about recruitment or removal?
I mean, I agree with the removal, and whether it's self-removal or we just say, hey, you know, we appreciate that you want to be on this, but unfortunately it seems that you're not able to right now. So maybe at a later time could be a nice way to put it to people. And then with the recruiting, it's just one of those, we just have to keep thinking about it. Like I just even had another thought of somebody like, oh, this person might be good. This might be a good perspective. So, and we all should just keep doing the recruiting when we can.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that too, because the recruiting can actually last year round, right? Like we've had 4 to 5 people join in since the regional conferences. And as we are shooting for members at large, it's also a good test for you that when you meet someone and they are a chapter leader, kind of to the multiple people who've made points about how there's a certain type of person who wants to join everything and do everything and be in charge of everything and be involved in everything. And you don't get to do member at large eventually. So if you're a chapter leader, we don't want to burn people out either, right? And we want to make sure that this can actually be kind of a pipeline for what involvement even looks like. So again, we're not totally there yet, but as you're thinking about recruitment, it can go on year round. Generally, I like to start the year with a group, right? But it can go on year round and challenge yourself to think about people who are not they're not currently in a volunteer role, meaning they're not on the NCC, they're not on the national board, they're not on a committee, they're not on a task force, and they're not a chapter leader or in a chapter leadership position, elected or appointed. You just want like run-of-the-mill human. If we wanted to get really exciting, Raul, I see your hand, so I'll call you on next. That was the plan anyway, because you've been on it so long. But what I would really love is even eventually this being a member-run committee by members for members, and you even have members who are of the committee. I'm calling it a committee. I shouldn't do that because I don't know what its voting rules are. But the Fuck Shit Up group could even have people on it that are not USBG members, because then fucking shit up is actually about an industry impact, not just an association. Anyway, but that's me dreaming big scale. So, Jo Beth, I think your points are noted correctly. If not, feel free to add them in. Jo Beth just put something in the chat. The person I just thought for is Carrie from Omaha. I was just in Omaha. She really is a member at large because I guess Omaha no longer has a chapter. Great, perfect. So then anytime you think of someone, I said this to Damien earlier, email that person, contact that person, introduce them to me. That's the first step. And until there's another official facilitator of the group, and then we'll meet, and then they can say yes or no to the time commitment, and we'll go from there. So just make sure that you introduce them to me first. Raul, you had your hand up. Do you want to say anything? And do you have any thoughts about, I think we're still on recruitment and removal.
Yeah, I like both points from, or all the points that were brought up in regards to, there has to be a certain threshold to where, hey, you're not really contributing, but that isn't to discount somebody coming in to contribute a little. So my thought was, if we had an identification of a full-time member of the FSU committee member, here's the time commitment that we need from you, here's the rules, blah, blah, blah. No problem. You don't have that much time? How about this? And we create a separate kind of tier where we source data from them and topics. So basically we could send these people that have volunteered to be part of this that may not have the time to be on these calls all the time. Maybe they could then fill out surveys that have specific questions like, what do you feel about this? Or how would this be better? Give us 3 things that we could do better in this regard. And then just send it out to them and see how many we get back. So at least they're still part of this group, kind of like a task force. So we break it up typically in USBG stuff. We know people that are great members, have good ideas, but they don't have a lot of time. We kind of task them for certain things like, hey, I'm putting a task force together for the holiday party. I only need you for a couple of days. This way they can do the survey. We can gather the data and their input, without them having to feel pressure to be on these calls or, whatever their apprehension to being a full-time member is, we can still hear their voice.
Sure. I think that's a really great idea. And I think in some ways that's kind of the people who are on the list who can't attend the meetings, right? And so like we'll use Jeffrey as an example because of his work schedule, he can't be on the calls, but I was able to text with him in the middle of the night the other night, and he actually was able to read the Google Doc, even though he wasn't on the meeting. So now as the facilitator of the group, I know what their thoughts are. Whether it's a formal survey or something, good luck getting anybody opening anything or reading anything. And I mean, all of the shade that comes with that. But that's a really great idea. Damien just put in the chat, Raul, is this like a full-time member and a part-time being a sounding board or information already discussed, getting larger sample size? I would say that it's, what I just said. So there's like a core group of people. Some of them can be on calls, some of them can do work in between, and some of them probably won't do either until the topic really gets them wound up. And then that group is the fuck shit up group. And then that can, the membership of that can be added to it and can also roughly follow a calendar year, or what I'm referring to as a cycle. Okay, great. Oh, this is fun. Okay, time commitment. So what I believe is currently the time commitment, so I'm going to read what's there in case some people can't see the sheet. But those of you that experience this, and Jo Beth, I'm looking at you specifically as the backup admin person, make sure that your work is noted. But the advisory group meets monthly-ish, I'm saying ish, to make commitments and implemented action plans while also sharing progress on current discussion items. Monthly meetings are 2 hours in length with various amounts of time being spent in between meetings and on working projects. So the first main edit I would say on that is that the fuck shit up committee or fuck shit up group, whatever it's called, y'all don't ever got to do nothing. Like there's no implementation, there's no action, there's no accountability. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Other leaders have to follow up with things. Y'all's job is just to fuck it up and then give it back to whatever it is. So like when the membership committee, Cole and Colleen came as guests in a fuck shit up, they brought up a membership thing, fuck shit up, fucked it up, like sending it through a car wash, asked questions, didn't understand what's going on. What the hell's this? I don't like this wording. I do like this wording. Why don't you do this? Then the membership committee can go back into itself and make its own decisions. So that's the main edit I would make, is around the implementation of action plans, because you're mostly just talking about them. Thoughts?
I mean, I just like your thoughts on that.
Okay, I'm just gonna delete the implementation. Meets monthly to make, I'm gonna put ish. We meet roughly 9 times a year, but it's when y'all are less busy. To make commitments while sharing progress on current discussion items. Okay, that sounds good. Monthly meetings are 2 hours in length with various amounts of time in between working meetings or working projects. This year, I pinky swore there would not be a lot of homework in between. Jo Beth, as the backup admin, do you have thoughts or comments that you want to jot in there about kind of what your commitment is? And then as a facilitator, I don't really do that much in between other than try to wrangle cats, so that I'm in the same place as everybody else is with the call.
I mean, like my time commitment versus everything else, I'm just, you gently nudge me, which I appreciate. Sometimes I remember on my own, but mostly you gently nudge me. And then I just send out a group. I actually taught myself something new at the age of 43, is how to make a fucking group on my cell phone. So all I have to do is just boom, do that. And also, side note, Damien, if you will, in the chat, send me your phone number, I would appreciate that. That way it's one less step. I don't have to go back through the doc that has all the information for everybody.
Yeah, it is in the roster. The only downside of the groups is that depending on how many iPhones or Androids, sometimes I think it's the Android people don't get it.
Oh, well, I'm Android, so people seem to be getting it. I don't know.
Oh, well, maybe that makes all the difference in the world. Okay, anyone
be.
who's interested, Damien's digits are in the chat. Good job. Okay.
Slippery
Okay.
slope, don't do it.
Slippery slope, is that what you said?
Don't.
How does the committee work? A doodle is sent out to schedule a meeting at a day and time that is agreed upon. I think that's actually one of the key pieces that help from the first couple of years to the last year, is that the first doodle that goes out is day and time variations. And then once that day and that time is picked, then the doodles are almost always roughly that window. Because of my travel schedule, they may vary an hour here, an hour there, 30 minutes or something. But this year they have been Tuesdays, roughly 11 to 1 Pacific time. Then emails, texts are sent 1,000 times as reminders. Then we have a monthly discussion. And then the recording and notes are sent out with links to next doodle. I also tried to do, I'm curious what y'all think about this because I know how much you love administrative work. But this year, I also tried to do 3 meetings at a time instead of doing this each month at a time because I was becoming homicidal. So the last doodle that went out are 3 different meetings as backup meetings in case we needed a backup meeting. What is that helpful for y'all to be able to do things far in advance? Are your schedules too wildly different? None of this matters except for me. Or something in between.
Kind of one of those, everything is, I mean, our schedules are going to be somewhat set, you know, to what we can and can't do if we're in that type of a position. And if it's not, if we're just bartending and we have to be there early, it's always going to be a flexible thing. So we can always try to say, yes, I can attend these. And then if it doesn't work out, as long as the communication is there, again, that's fine. Because again, like Paula, she has a hard time meeting at this time, but since it's the general time that most of us are able to, we just have to have her read over stuff and get it back to you when she can.
Excellent. All right, well, I appreciate being able to do it multiple times, and as long as people don't change jobs, which is rare, that y'all are in the same job for an entire year, then it works out good. For the record, in the last doodle, the October 18th was the least popular. So if we wanted to do another meeting in October before the holiday season start, it would be October 25th from 12 to 2 Pacific. I don't know if we're going to need it, but FYI, that was the popular winner that I am also on the planet for. Okay. In the top part of the notes, what does Fuck Shit Up do? Reviews and response to any former, current, future policy practices of USBG. Transparency in action that's what really like having the opportunity before anything is finalized, getting to fuck it up. That's important. Gives people who don't have current leadership positions and in organization a voice and a say, also is kind of that pipeline piece. Except that is not a P, that is a parentheses. Okay. In case you don't know, in between 2020 and 2022, this group has established the group generally in the first year, developed and recommended the adoption of the value statement, which was adopted unanimously and as worded, that came out of this group. Advanced a revised draft of the member code of conduct, which we probably should revisit again next year, just in case. Reviewed the conflict resolution process and policy against harassment, providing recommendations to the National Resolution Committee. There was a great conversation we had about membership dues and changes, and all of those changes were made. We had a conversation about background checks, conflict resolution process reviewed for those few members that are removed from membership and how to be reinstated. And we focus on review instead of taking creation off the board, or action off the board, I think maybe is what that's supposed to say. Prevent practices that may perpetuate racism, sexism, and other potential biases within the organization. Act as the moral compass of the USBG Guild and Foundation. That is a tall claim, but I think that having random people be able to like punch holes in stuff, actually an outcome is kind of making sure that the moral compass of the organization stays true to the mission and vision. If we're tasked with a review, we are guaranteed a written response from the board on how and if our feedback was utilized. I don't know that needs to be in written form because we have a board liaison, the executive director, and the board president. So the communication certainly happens, but I do think that that's also why they're invited to the meetings. What are y'all's thoughts on that? Do you want some kind of written response, or do you think that am I wrong in assuming that's what the participation and the presence does?
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I personally think getting a written response from the board is kind of, shows that what we do is making a difference, that we know for a fact that they're listening.
Sure, so.
They being myself and Cole included.
I was gonna say, Raul, like, you, as a perfect example, so like, as a board member, so you are the board liaison to the group, Cole is the president of the national board, and then Aaron obviously is the executive director. So I'm curious, Raul, what would you put in let's take the piece around, the financial dues, like there was actual wording that if you hadn't paid your dues in a while, you had to pay back dues before you could become a current member again. And then we had a conversation that that's jacked up, so it was dropped. So then what would you, as the board liaison or the board president, what would you put in writing to the Fuck Shit Up committee? Who would you send it to? And how would you envision that getting discussed so that both as a Fuck Shit Up member and as a board member, that sense of accountability is present, different than just being physically present on the call?
I think operationally, having the board liaison, whoever it may be or is at the time, would bring the written response from the full board and say, hey, on this action, this is the action we took, or on this issue, this is the action that we took. Here's how, and we heard your input. However, that's, phrased out, but I just think it's, so people don't get this in their head that, well, why am I on this call? Is it making a difference, right? At least they know that the rest of the board heard it. So yeah, sure, me and Cole are on there, but is Colleen getting this information? Is Ingrid getting this information? And then for me, putting my board hat on, when I'm at a board meeting and I'm informing them of FSU input, it's good for everyone to hear it. You know what I mean? Like I can bring something, hey guys, this is what they're saying. So, yeah, I think operationally, if we're just talking about how it would run, if we're laving that out, I think the written response would be delivered via Zoom call on one of these and say, hey, in regards to that matter of, again, let's say it's the dues repayment, here's the action we took, and here's how I felt our input, was brought to the table.
All right, totally cool. And that, just to reiterate, that's different than at the beginning of the call when the facilitator says, do you have any announcements or updates? That's actually like something you would potentially provide as a PDF or an email to everyone, or would you link it into the chat actively in a
Yeah, I
meeting?
would say probably like the same way you shared, the charter. We could share it in the chat with everybody for the people who are here on the call. But, if we're talking about involving some of these part-time people that are giving us data, maybe we should email it out to the full group. Hey, here's the written response. And then I can talk about it for those interested on the call or whoever the board liaison is.
Got it. To build.
And this is like issue by issue though. So for instance, if FSU is very involved in the issue of, the 100th anniversary, then we would say, hey, here's how we're moving forward with the 100th anniversary. Here's where your input was heard and processed, and this is the decision the board has made.
Excellent. So I put the wording, if we're tasked to review, we are guaranteed a written response to the full FSU group to build an accountability of how FSU's conversations were acted upon.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Soups. Great. I think that's covered. Okay, great. Okay, look, we are nailing it. We're only an hour in and we already did all this shit. Good for us. Okay, so now we are at the top of the Google Doc. So the current existing language, and y'all are welcome to hatchet it, right? But the current existing language is, in theory, recapping the directive. So the directive is to determine the purpose, vision, mission, charter of the Fuck Shit Up, AKA once referred to as the advisory council, I often refer to as the car wash, because sometimes Fuck Shit Up is not appropriate language. And some of the clients I have, I call it a car wash. This one, we can call it the fucking car wash for all I care. I don't care. So the purpose, 3 bullets, currently reads, read through different USBG documents and look for language that sucks and should be better. Bullet number 2, weigh in on member and partner feedback to give USBG leaders context from the member viewpoint. And bullet number 3, make recommendations to the board of directors on the above. I'm gonna just edit board of directors, NCC, or other committees and or task forces.
Chad, I'm just gonna park, brother. Thank you.
Reza, I'm muting you. Happy doctor's appointment though. Oh, he is signing off. That just is what happened. Okay. Great. Okay, so if that, under the guise of that being kind of the purpose, we can add more, we can tweak language, etc. Then the mission would be to help the USBG evaluate past, current, and proposed structure, policies, and dynamics that are both helping and hindering the growth of the organization. Let's just stop there. Thoughts, comments on the purpose side, that's the plural, and or the single sentence-ish mission. We are not limited to 3 or a single sentence.
Sorry, I'm a bit distracted. I'm texting back and forth with Jason. He was waiting for his laptop to charge, but I'm telling him, you can just jump on your phone if you want.
Yeah, also, this recording will go out, much like we've discussed, to the people who couldn't be on the meeting. I already told Jason this too, that you could watch the recording, which no one will do, or you can hop into the Google Doc as you wish, when you wish, which also very few people will do. But they have the opportunity if they want. All right, any other, let's start with purposes, because maybe that was too big of an ask. So read through, weigh in, and make recommendations. That's basically the 3 verbiages. Are there other thoughts about what this group has done, right? Like what kind of, I think that pretty much encompasses what this group has done. Are there other thoughts that I'm somehow missing that maybe make sense to me, but don't make sense outside of my brain so that I didn't articulate them? Hearing
No, I
none.
mean, it sounds right to me too. I just, it's almost like an oversight role, but not official oversight. You know what I mean? It's like a
Check.
gut check. Yeah.
Checks and balances. Great. I mean, in theory, that's what it's supposed to be. So that's awesome that it feels that way. Okay, and David says, sounds about right to me. Reza had to go to doctor's appointment. Okay. Okay, then let's say that the purpose stays, because maybe it gets edited if we look at the mission statement. So I will tell you off the bat, I do not like the verb help, but to help
No,
the USBG evaluate past, current, and proposed structures, policies, and dynamics. I do like the word dynamics because that is an all-encompassing term that are both helping and hindering the growth of the organization. I love all that part. Wordsmithers, thoughts, comments?
yep, 2 seconds, I'm typing something for you.
Oh, can't even wait. Are you putting it in the doc or the chat?
I'm putting it in my own thing and I'm gonna send it to you.
What means send?
1 second.
One thing at a time. We'll just entertain ourselves.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Anybody else who wants to go, please go.
Nobody's going. They were just staring at you. No
Yep.
pressure.
Fair enough, I accept.
While you're doing that, I will tell you that I was at a conference recently of healthcare workers at a private nursing home chain. And there was a moment where they said whatever it is that they said, and I just responded heard, as if it was a complete sentence, and they looked at me like I was nuts, and I was like, excuse me, that is the ghost of another client. So then I had to say, I hear what you are saying and I agree with it. Let's do that. And then they felt much better.
See, it's just so much easier. Heard.
And once you start yelling behind when you're behind somebody, just in normal society, that's when you know it's in your brain.
Yeah, I still say door.
Right behind. Yeah, corner.
Yeah. Whenever I walk in and out of a door, I still say door. All right.
Need
Mo?
one more.
Go for it. I highly recommend Joe Beth. She's very good with those words. She's making a face. I did that.
Yeah.
Mo, I don't
Thank
know
you.
if you're in a place to talk, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts or comments. Because you are both a new and a returning member.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, I've been listening, so I've been.
I know, because you're a rock star.
No, I have no thoughts. I mean, I totally understand I totally understand everybody's concerns, especially when you're doing the work. I know I fell off for a little bit from working from tills, like doing events and then camp. I'm sorry. I'm in a car, but I'm listening. And then also taking care of my sick grandmother. So I totally get it. And I really don't have much to say. Yeah, I'm just listening and taking it all in.
Well,
So
you are nailing it. And for those of you that don't know, Mo and Kevin were strategically very powerful in the financial dues edits that were made. And because of work schedules, they haven't really been able to be on another call. So they don't even necessarily know that occurred. So back to Raul, to your point about accountability, the facilitator, which is, I think it's important to mention that Joe Beth, the communication backup, and the facilitator, none of that is articulated so far in the charter that these things exist. And that might be something we want to add. But I have taken it when I talk to people like, hey, that conversation that you did, this is what happened. But I've been doing that individually. So that's part of the reason I really like the accountability that Raul was talking about earlier. And thank you, Mo, for coming back. Totally appreciate it. And thank you, Jason, for joining us as well. I hope your charger situation is under control. Damien put into the chat the improvement and growth of the USBG by evaluating past, current, and proposed structure, policies, and dynamics in order for continued success and development of the organization and its members. What is that? I mean, I read that, but what?
Just kind of the mission statement, maybe reimagined.
Oh, it's a mission statement example. Okay, let me see if I can put it in there. Nope, it
And
won't.
feel free to do whatever.
Can you paste it into the Google Doc? I can't
Yes,
get
I
it.
can.
Button paste. Perfect. Maybe it'll do it because you originated it. Great. Jason, just so you know, we're reviewing the Google Doc. Do you need the link to the Google Doc? You're on that shit. Okay, great. So we started at the bottom and worked our way up. And currently the purpose-ish seems relatively-ish clear. And I'm highlighting the key words. And now we are working on mission. Damien has a suggestion. I believe he called it a reimagine.
So on the mission, Jess, I'm looking
it
at
copied. Why did it?
thesaurus.com.
There it is.
Was it just the word help? Are you looking for, like, in cooperation with the USBG, we evaluate, you know, could it be something like that?
Oh, I just don't like help because I think it's windy. Like the fuck shit up committee doesn't help anything. The fuck shit up punches holes in shit.
Right.
For a purpose, like as a service, right? So in some ways, I would think maybe it serves the USBG.
Yeah, or to assist the USBG in evaluating past, you know.
One suggestion, I don't know, this word's sticking in my head. I know it's maybe ahead of our skis, but instead of help, would it be to provide an oversight role on specific issues for the USBG? We're not really like in charge of the board. We're kind of offering
Yeah, I wouldn't
guidance.
say, I would say oversight because the national board is ultimately the oversighter. And ultimately, like Raul, when you put your board hat on, you could cancel the function up committee at any moment. The power of those kind of choices is at the next.
One ring to rule them all, Raul.
Yeah, that worked out great, huh? In the movie. What was I going to say? To provide guidance on specific issues being considered by the board. I know that's pretty verbose, but there's got to be a shortened version of that.
Yeah.
I added mine into the Google documents. Go jack mine up from there. Like, I think it has kind of a piece of what everybody's saying because I was listening, and then just jack up mine to wherever you guys want it to be.
Yeah, wherever the purple cursor is, we're at where it needs a verb.
I don't even know what a verb is. I just talk.
Yeah, it's the word that we're working around now. Help,
Yeah.
serve, provide, guide. I think I like the word almost like accountability, but
Mm-hmm.
the balance between accountability and authority is important, right? And so fuck shit up has no authority. And it shouldn't have authority of any kind, because then it can't really fuck shit up, because you're going to be responsible for whatever you are sharing authority with, right? So you want it to be completely independent of the existing org chart, of the existing structure.
Yeah, I would aid, assist, succor.
To provide perspective,
Sure.
to provide perspective and informed opinion on.
What I love about the opinion piece, right, is that oftentimes when you get into a leadership role, you forget what it feels like to just be a member. And so then when you're in a leadership role, like just a member, I'm using air quotes, but when you're in a leadership role, you're so much more aware of all the other things that are happening that you forget what the impact is, which is why like your average member doesn't know very like critically important information, because it doesn't trickle down because it's being discussed up here, and fuck shit up kind of bridges that gap. All right, y'all wordsmith away, feel free. But ultimately, the other piece that I would nudge on this sentence is that when like Joe Beth just thought of that person, was their name Carrie? Is that correct? Am I remember correctly? So like this would also be the sentence that you would say, this is what it does.
Mhm.
Right? And I would imagine what that would do is what you would actually say is, this is what it does. And what we mean is it fuck shits up. Right? Because like I said at the beginning, the bonus of fuck shit up is it's very clear who we're recruiting and what you're doing.
All right, I'm gonna have to get going. I'm sorry. My mom's train is coming in shortly.
Oh, hi, Mom. Thank you for your help.
I'm gonna be, luckily, it was delayed a little bit so I could be on here.
Oh, great. I will politely nudge you when I send out the minutes and the notes and the recording and all of that crap. I
Perfect.
will politely nudge you again. Thank you for being amazing.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Nice to meet you, Joe Left.
Bye. Okay, some people are still working on mission. I don't want to confuse the people who are still working on mission, but if you are not working on mission, can we do two things at once? Whoever it is that is typing into mission, great, knock yourself out. If you are not typing into mission, I would like to bring up another question that we can have a conversation about that hopefully won't be too distracting with the person who is typing, or persons who are typing. And that is, we have the facilitator, which currently is me, facilitator role, and then the communications role. Like other groups, you might have like officers, right? Well, this group doesn't really have officers because it doesn't have any power. But the communications role, which has been Joe Beth this year. Last year, it was Jean Samuels, and I think the year before I did it all. So my question would be is, are there any specific pieces, especially those of you that have experienced Joe Beth as the communications person and me as the facilitator, are there any specific details that you'd want noted of what these two roles can be? I'm not quitting, and y'all gonna have to fire me pretty much. But if somebody were interested in facilitating, it might be good to articulate
Yeah.
what the facilitator does and or what the communications person.
No, 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 it's fine. Sorry.
Can we have that conversation while it looks like Jason is tearing shit up?
I would say a facilitator is the moderator, and the moderator of the group, I feel like,
Okay,
because you're bringing topics, not really bringing topics, you're sourcing topics, crowdsourcing topics, and also moderating the discussion so it doesn't get, off the rails, is what I would say the facilitator does, if I'm putting in my 2 cents.
yeah, totally. And I added in there, keeps track of the, not comments, the topics. So people from all over the organization are always sending me like, hey, can fuck shit up talk about this? So then I just add it to the list. And then when Aaron and I have our meeting at the beginning of the year, we come up with a list of everything we hope we can accomplish inside of a year with fuck shit up. And then every time I meet with a board member, I ask the NCC, I ask the foundation, I ask, and then any other committee or task force, I ask, do you have anything for fuck shit up? So then I keep track of it and try really hard to get through all those topics by the end of the year. So if you ever feel like forced, that's why, is because I have like a list I'm trying to do. Great. Does the facilitator do anything else? Yes. Takes notes. Organizes meetings. Keeps track of time, basically. And is charming and funny. I'm not going to put that in the charter. Okay. Communications person sends reminders of meetings and homework. Zoom assistance. Okay, and I said clearinghouse for people attending or not. I can't type today. All right, Jason, how is the mission-y thing happening?
Good.
You like fly in, hatchet up the mission in a perfect, amazing way. And now here we are. Do you want to read what you've done?
Yeah, to provide dynamic perspectives that aid the USPG in its operations. The FSU does that by its focus on task, and enterprise structures, policies, and dynamics. The overall goal is the continued success and development of the organization and its members.
Love it.
All right. Super dupes. That looks pretty amazing.
It's awesome.
Great. All right. Well, in theory, if y'all are all feeling decent about this as like a pause place, what I will do is I'll go through it and check and see if there's anything misspelled or if it needs a comma or something. I'm not the most awesome at that, but I'm decent. And then I'm assuming Raul Cole, and I'll send make sure that Aaron knows, or he'll probably look at it later tonight. But then I'm assuming it will get slated at some point as a discussion point within the national board. I don't know when that is. I don't know what's on that agenda. I don't know what's on that docket. They'll figure that out. And then what's fascinating is that once it's finalized or finalized-ish, it probably will come back to fuck shit up and see if like that fits, right? And then once it's approved, then this can become an official whatever it's going to be. Committee, task force, council, group, whatever. Does that sound like a good process to everyone? Are we all cool with that?
Good here.
Good. I'm curious, Raul or Cole, since you are the national board representatives on the call, am I interpreting kind of the next step correctly?
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
All right, Madam President.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's just got to get in the agenda, which we do committee reviews every meeting, so I'm sure it'll come up
Okay, perfect.
as a product to review.
Product. I'm writing that down, language, product to review. Okay, I will send out the link with the notes and the recording of today's meeting on the off chance anybody's bored enough to look at them after the meeting. And then I would assume that deadline would be the next few days. And then y'all do whatever you need to do on that level with it. I'm not in charge of that. So thumbs up. And we have 35 minutes left for the bonus topic. Does anybody need a stretch break? Are you good? Can we go to fuck around and find out?
Only if there's a graph involved. Gotta be a graph.
I know there's definitely a graph involved, but it's all in our minds. Okay, Jason, you just got here. So let me do the preamble of what the fuck around find up idea is. Okay, so I have had a number of conversations with people involved in different chapters as I've been rolling out the pilot for the membership toolkit. And questions that I'm getting that I find interesting. And because I'm not an insider, I'm like, that seems like something we should talk about and fuck shit up. And here we are. So I'm calling it a fuck around, find out. So if I was a chapter executive board member, right? So if I remember correctly, the officers are appointed once you're elected. Is that correct? Did I get it backwards? This is the audience participation question.
You got it correct. There are
Yes.
9 board members, and then there's officers selected after that.
Okay, perfect. So you're elected, and then once you're elected, some of them become officers. So my question is, there are rules and policies for shenanigans when you are a member and you need to be removed from membership. And chapters actually have the quote unquote authority or power, whatever word you want to use, to remove an officer. So they've been elected, now they're in secretary, they're in treasurer, they're a president, they're a vice president. They can demote someone from an officer position, an executive board member position, due to shenanigans that don't actually need a ton of justification. So that's why I'm calling it fuck around. So because there are ethical and moral things that happen when someone is a dickhead or an asshole, what I wanted to do was to facilitate a conversation, because so many of you have actually been involved on a chapter level. What do you think it means to fuck around if finding out means that they are being demoted from their leadership position? David actually is going to hop in for a second and talk about this because we talked about it in our one-on-one. But if fuck around, find out. If find out means you are no longer an officer, how would that outcome, what kind of behaviors would not necessarily remove them as members, but to articulate what chapter leadership can do? So like Aaron said at the top of the call, and then I'll go to you, David. Aaron said at the top of the call that if you are threatening to close the chapter down because you had a bad day, or because someone broke up with you, or because you are a petty motherfucker, that's fucking around. So at what point is fucking around gonna get, can it be articulated so that chapter leaders feel empowered, even though policy wise they're empowered, but could culturally feel empowered to be like, you don't get to be president anymore if you're threatening to close the chapter because you are an asshole. So that's the conversation I want to have. What means actually fucking around? So David, I'll turn it over to you because I know you're at work. What are your thoughts?
Hey everybody. So when we were speaking earlier too, a little bit about it, I kind of mentioned just seeing how one would feel after, say, a situation were to happen. So for an example, if such and such happened at an event, and now any member or anyone who goes out of their way to do business with the USBG feels uncomfortable around the particular individual who might have done something to them or made the event happen. If now somebody no longer wants to work with us or wants to leave, because of that, they no longer feel comfortable being around a position around that person who is in a particular position, whether it be a treasurer or a leadership position, especially, then I think that's enough to just say, hey, no, you need to step down. This is why. and we can make it anonymous, make it not, not anonymous if they feel comfortable, but yeah, somebody feels just generally disrespected or doesn't really feel comfortable, and even after an apology comes across. So that, and especially if there's anything that has to do with race or anything at that level, I don't think that's I don't think it's hard to say, no, you need to step down. So yeah, that's kind of what we were going on about earlier.
That's awesome. Okay, totally cool. Thank you for the recap. And also kind of the specific examples, right? Is that some things can happen and they can go to the resolution committee. Some things can happen and they can get, you just have like a stern conversation. But I think it's important for chapter leaders to know that they also don't have to just tolerate it. It's your chapter, it's your organization. You can say, you fucked around, now you're gonna find out, bye. But what does that look like? What kind of behaviors, you don't have to name names, I would encourage you not to name names, but what kind of behaviors aren't breaking a rule or a policy, but are not in alignment with good chapter leadership? I want to dive in a little bit to that kind of subjectivity. So like sexual assault is actually illegal, right? So you don't have to go all the way that far. Sexual harassment, illegal. Technically, being a racist dickhead, also illegal. Usually not as strongly enforced, but should be. Biased behaviors can be illegal or against policies, etc. But dickery is sometimes harder to articulate. And I would say each chapter may very well have a different culture that also changes and evolves with each set of kind of chapter leadership. So talking about the ethical or moral chops of what a fuck around find out could be. What would that lever, maybe asking the inverse is helpful. What would that lever not look like?
I mean, those are really good points to me, and for a lot of different reasons. I know, like, and Raul, feel free to chime in. He and I have known each other for a long time, and both as members, non-members. He is the president, me on the board, and active, and so on. But like in Vegas, and again, not comparing it to anybody else, it's a very special culture there. It's a very tight-knit culture. There's certainly little groups and cliques within it, like there isn't any high school situation. But I'll use myself as an example, right? Like I'm not always the easiest human being to deal with in these settings, but a couple times where I've been the guest speaker, Raul has purposely scheduled me at the end to speak at the end because I tend to be the hammer. Now there's some people who don't love that and don't love to hear my message. But it's sometimes a message that needs to be said. And that was my role at that time in that. But where I could also see and have had people say to me like, hey, you don't have to be like that. That I didn't like that. And, part of me is like, okay, like I am happy to internalize and look at my own message, my own belief system and how I deliver that. But also I'm looking at them like, I've had pots and pans thrown at me in a kitchen before. Grow up, right? There's some semblance of balance in that. Again, I'm not saying throwing pots and pans is the right way either. That's not how I've done things. But so there's I don't know. Like I think it's a very slippery slope, especially now. And again, I don't know that I'm the one to even weigh in on this fully, but that we kind of things that involve arrest and actual breaking of the law. Absolutely, I have no tolerance for that. Racism, sexism, any terms of negative, behavior towards groups of people, so on and so forth. I think those are very serious things. But like two people had an argument, that can be a slippery slope, right? We start to talk about, we start to get in the world that we all live in with politics, where like, oh, you're a Trump guy, I hate you. Oh, you're a Biden guy, I hate you. Or whatever thing is going on in politics in the world right now. Like that's a really slippery slope, and it seems like to me that it carries over your views and how everybody feels about politics in this world also carries over into our social world. And I think that is just something that would have to be very clearly defined and what we would step into as a group, as all of USBG, not just this group, any group, like what we would be policing and what we wouldn't be policing. I mean, there's a very dangerous, again, I don't slippery slope. It's a dangerous situation. Obviously, you know, it would need a lot of food for thought, but I think it's a very good conversation to have 100%.
I also want to pull out that another way fuck around, find out can be stupid, which Damien, I think you touched on, but I want to make sure we all heard this, is that if Damien and I get in a fight, which is highly possible, and we are both on an executive board, right? Or let's make it even different. Like I'm on the executive board and Damien isn't. Fuck around, find out is not a revenge tool I have to apply to Damien because I think he's a dick. So you also need to know when fucking around isn't enough, but finding out is also not enough. So then I would encourage, like, one person cannot employ a fuck around, find out. But maybe it's a majority of the board, of the executive board of a chapter agrees that this person needs to find out. Maybe the majority doesn't happen the first time or the second time, but the third time the majority does happen. Maybe it's 2 strikes. David and I are talking about that. It's 2 strikes, but at the 3rd strike, where is the rest of the executive board? And if it's the majority of the board, then they go find out. And the finding out is that they just are removed from their officer position so that they don't have access. I've seen a lot of organizations, specifically with treasury, is they'll spend all the money, close down the account so that the chapter is in default, and then it closes out the entire chapter without the members even knowing what happened. You don't want that to happen because somebody's petty. And I've met y'all, some of y'all real petty. So I think, Damien, I appreciate you kind of adding that. So David, your hand is up. Did you want to say something else?
Oh, no, I did. I'm fine. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great. Other thoughts, comments? If we did kind of what isn't a fuck around, find out, what, again, not naming names, but like hypothetically, have there been any experiences that you have seen that did not get a fuck around, find out, that should have gotten a fuck around, find out, for the sake of the conversation and possibly some psychological healing? But I wanted to be able to use some examples so that when I put it into the notes, there's a clear understanding of what we mean by what is a fucking around and when the find out isn't being petty, but it's actually appropriate. Are there any examples you can think of where this would have been a lever that kind existing chapter members didn't really know that they had? They do in policy, but they didn't do it.
So just to kind of bring it into focus a little bit, this is in regards to the board being able to remove somebody from an officer position, right? Because
Right,
we're not talking about removing somebody for being a member. You could
Right.
be an asshole and be a member all you want, you know, but it's, if you're in a leadership role, that's a different story because you're in an elevated role and you're in charge of being, you know, helping guide the mission of the chapter. So, you know, for me, the first thing that stands out, that's not, well, I guess it is an illegal thing to do if you get a DUI, but overconsumption at events, like when you're serving as a chapter leader, you know, because I've known chapters that have had to remove, you know, officers because they would consistently show up, you know, intoxicated to events. So there's some language around responsible drinking there. I think could be, hey, listen, you're a great member and we love you, but this ain't, you know, this ain't for you. You know what I mean? And then that's without getting into, because I think when you talk about removing a member from the USBG, that, like, as you pointed out at the beginning, that's a whole conversation. You're allowed to be your true self and be a member. There's certain, you know, code of conduct, of course, you have to abide by, but removing a chapter officer, you know, that comes to mind. You know, the first thing is overconsumption and over intoxication at an event, serving in your role.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because sometimes this can be confusing. So we are talking only about chapter officers having a lever for their own chapter officers, right? So like if a Vegas officer is a dickwad to a New Orleans officer, New Orleans can't remove a Vegas officer, but the other Vegas officers could potentially remove other Vegas officers if needed.
Yes.
We would not, no, just kidding.
And do you think, you know, but democracy tends to kind of win over these things, but it's not always appropriate. Do you think that a majority of the officers would need to vote an affirmative of removing someone from a position of leadership within a chapter? And Cole added that the code of conduct covers getting wasted at events, in case that happens. But it is also important, and I'm just throwing this out there, is that sometimes people's behavior at a not USBG event, because it's not a USBG event, it can't be held accountable inside of USBG, because it has to be a USBG event by a USBG member at a USBG event in order to be held accountable inside of USBG. But like their life behaviors could be fucking around and not necessarily be inside of specific USBG events. It's certainly a lot easier to flip this lever if it is, but that's why I wanted to have the conversation.
I mean, I feel like the code of conduct exists, and you know, I don't. While it can be super specific to USBG events and things of the like anytime there's 2 or 3 USBG members in a room, like they're going to be grouped together, and it's that, you know what I mean? I don't necessarily think it should just cover those events. Board members will get drunk anywhere, you know what I mean? I'm not always, but like a board member who has a drinking issue is going to get drunk anywhere, and they're still going to be connected to the USBG at some level.
Yeah. Or, I mean, to take it out of drinking, like, you know, in my personal life, I am bouncing checks. I'm playing the coconut game with credit cards and checks and my own rent, and I'm doing some shenanigans that's financially irresponsible in my own life. And I'm currently the treasurer of your chapter. I haven't done anything wrong with any of the funding at the chapter, but it's a bad look, right? Like that's what we're talking about with like the subjectivity of this, is how bad of a look does it need to be for a majority of the chapter leadership board to say, this is a bad look. We want you to step down as treasurer so that we don't have to police everything you're doing financially while you get your own financial life in order.
That's tough. I mean, again, I hear what you're saying. It makes sense. That's tough. But like, how many name the profession walk out of work on Friday at 5 o'clock and are drunk till Monday morning at 8 o'clock when they walk into the office? Like, if they're doing their job and they're doing what they're supposed to, technically, in theory, who gives a shit what bar, how drunk they were on those days they weren't working, right? To just use a general example. I mean, people go 40 years in a company doing stuff like that, right? Like, I'm not against what you're saying in terms of the look. I think the look and the feel is very important, but how do you, I don't know, how do you implement that? Because it's very easily like, if you were to say, accuse me of those things that, you just use an example, I'd be like, that's not true. Not happening. Like, what's the, like, how do you enforce that? Right. Because I'd be like, well, no, of course I'm not showing you my bank statements and what's going on in my life. That's not happening. You just made that up. You're a bad person. And then we get into this weird world. So I'm not against, you're absolutely right. Like, we probably don't want to, hire known or vote in known felons of bank robberies to handle the treasury, right? That's not the move. But I don't know how you would police people's personal life to their, because it's tough too. I even struggle. I just texted Raul. I struggle with the USBG thing. Like, right, you have a lot of young 20s, and I'm guilty of this through my time in the USBG when I was a little bit younger and even older. USBG, I know that there's a lot of responsible people, and there's people that handle themselves very well with alcohol and all those things, but effectively, hi, welcome to USBG. Welcome to this 3-hour open bar event where we're promoting learning. That's really what's happening, right? It's free booze for an hour, for 2 hours, for a Christmas party, for things like that. So we can say all we want, like these things don't happen. All these famous people that are on our Facebooks and our Instagrams and that have been a part of it, legends like that. I mean, that's again, Vegas guy, where a lot of this stuff originated. Come on, man. Like,
Yeah, well, and that's part of the reason I'm trying to not talk about alcohol and drugs, because that's pretty clearly articulated in the code of conduct.
I don't think it's enforced.
Well, enforcement's different, but the fuck around find out is a totally different topic, right? So you're not sharing bad information. It's just, this is why I wanted to have this kind of conversation.
Cool.
Because also, what if I was the president of, what's a town that doesn't have a chapter? Omaha. I am the president of an Omaha USBG chapter, and all I do is badmouth USBG. It's awful and horrible. That's not illegal. Freedom of expression is fine, but why the fuck would you want them to be the president? Right? But maybe they're the only person who would do it. Maybe they're every single other position. There's a lot of different arms to be able to handle kind of an attitude problem. But in the case where a majority of, I'm using the word majority because I'm assuming that's what y'all would want to do, but that's not, I'm not beholden to that. I'm just using as example. But if the majority of the officers of a chapter find someone's behavior problematic, can that behavior be, what I'm finding is that that's occurring, but they don't necessarily believe that they have the power or the authority to remove someone from an officer position, even though in the bylaws it says that they do. So then they're wanting someone else to do the confrontation, basically. So instead of outsourcing the confrontation, I thought it would be good to potentially have a conversation to clarify what fucking around means and how you would get to finding out. Would it be a majority vote of the other executive boards? And how do you do a checks and balance on it so that it's not being used for petty or personal purposes, but is actually for the good of the chapter? Cole put into the chat, the specific language about substance abuse in the code of conduct is not limited to events. Understanding the harm that substance abuse can cause to myself and my community, and be willing to accept help if my substance use appears to be impacting my own health or my own well-being of others. So. Other thoughts, conversations, inputs, ideas? I have never been a leader in any of your chapters, so I don't know. David, your hand is up, or it's still up. I can't tell.
Oh yeah, it's up.
All right, go.
Oh yeah, just kind of brainstorming here about the subject at hand and everything. I mean, if someone is not a right fit for a position, and if they are, the last one is kind of like what you're saying. If there's a lot of things to juggle there, you know, if they are the only one, but it's not representing the collective well, especially bad mouthing it, then that's probably a good time to potentially find out if you want to close down the Omaha chapter, you know, or things of that nature. Like if maybe you have to take that extra step in order to protect the collective that is the USBG, and maybe just have the right conversation first before doing making the big decision, you know, of letting that individual go or closing down that chapter, or, you know, at least trying to put in some work first, because, you know, closing down a whole chapter is quite a big deal. But in terms of like the finances thing, it's another rocky one, you know. If their life on their end, they're not doing great financially in terms of the organization and everything of it, that's none of my business. But if they're doing their job really well, then there's a question mark there. But also we could check in to say, hey, do you need to take a step down from treasurer so you can check that? But maybe
Life together.
yeah, so you can get your life together. It's like thinking about, I think something to always think about period with a lot of these decisions that we're even making, right? Or talking to people about it is trying to think about how they would receive it when spoken to, you know. If I bring up anything to somebody, like think about how they would receive what I'm giving them. So if even have to have a very hard talk with someone, it's not what I'm saying, it's how I'm going to say it and how they're going to receive it. So that way they get the clear message, because everyone communicates different, you know. So it's just kind of thinking about those things back and forth when making those big decisions of maybe we should ask that individual to step down, or oh well, no one else wants to fill the role, maybe we have to close down that chapter. Let's get on that to find out if that's what we have to do, you know, or whatever it may be. Yeah, just
I mean, I feel like these issues would be noticed. Like, I don't think, like, let's say there's 9 people for that chapter. I don't think one person would see something that someone else wouldn't be able to like validate or identify as well. Like, it feels like this should, within that chapter, be up for group review, or they can kind of call like a small review with that person. I don't think it should be a one-on-one thing. I think you're going to run into those verbiage and reactive feelings definitely if it's a one-on-one thing. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the members or the board members should have a power of review. Maybe 2 or 3 of them sit down with that person, discuss what's happening. Maybe that person has a plan already to fix the things that we're just noticing.
There's like an intervention before the lever is pulled. Yeah. Without getting into specifics, I know that one of the conversations that I had at the leadership retreat for chapter leaders recently is I point blank told somebody who was in attendance, like, you don't have to be here. Like, this is an opportunity for you. And if you don't want to take the opportunity, like, go home. And I think sometimes when people get into a leadership position, they don't know that they can step down. Similar to like other jobs that I've had, like I have fired half of my staff before because the other half was doing all of the work. So instead of like carrying around dead weight, cut the fucking dead weight and like get credit for the work you're actually doing. You don't want to shoot for that. Like, you'd like to shoot for a full board or a full staff, but that's an important conversation to have. So I really appreciate the thoughts here. And I wanted to make sure that, frankly, Fuck Shit Up is one of the best places to have this conversation instead of it just being kind of my random ideas. So we might revisit this in a minute when I kind of figure out like, what does this need to look like, or what should it say, and what's the appropriate place of doing that. I do, as we kind of wrap up today, one, I want to make sure that you know that like ongoing homework, if you want to have a one-on-one with me, please schedule it. And I'm happy to talk about what's on the agenda for Fuck Shit Up, where it came from, what we could be doing in the future. I want you to also send me a text message or an individual chat on this call, but a text message is great time-wise. If you are interested in being in the group next year, we kind of identified, pulling back from what Raul had said, we kind of identified 2 ways of being involved. So I'm going to call it kind of first string, second string. First string are people who are involved in a conversation in a meeting, and second string can't come to the meeting but want to be involved, right? So then maybe they're doing stuff in between meetings or on their own. Not involved at all is not first or second string. So if you're interested in being involved next year, next cycle, please let me know. I generally assume the answer is yes. But if you don't want to, or you can't or something, there is no harm in that. Just let me know and we'll stop bugging you. If you do, we will continue bugging you and hopefully you can attend meetings. If we are interested, we could do a meeting October 25th. I can't do right up at the normal time, so it would be an hour later, so 12 to 2 Pacific. One of the conversations, and for Cole and or Raul who are on the call, this may make them roll their eyes, but one of the conversations that I've been trying to have on a national level, and it makes their eyes roll in the back of their head, so I thought I'd bring it up and Fuck Shit Up, is that USBG really needs to identify its collection of avatars of who could be a member, who should be a member, who ought to be a member, and who is currently a member. There's obviously different kinds of members and entry points like enthusiasts and those kind of things. But until it can really, as an organization, really wrap its heads around the collection of kind of people that you are marketing to, the avatars are really important for marketing choices. And I mean, down to like colors and fonts to locations to kind of programming, etc. So I'd really like to initiate a conversation before the end of the year about Avatar, just to see what fuck shit up comes up with. So the most popular date was October 25th from 12 to 2 Pacific. So I'm going to make a suggestion that that is the topic and that that's the last meeting of the year. So then November and December, y'all get to do whatever the hell it is y'all do that supports basically the entire US economy for 2 months. You get to do that. And then we'll circle back with all of the next cycle members and we'll send out a doodle probably in February to get things going. And usually the first meeting is in March. So thoughts, comments, anything about hopefully October 25th and or kind of the tell me if you want in. Jason's already said there you're here until I kick you out. People have said that and they have dropped out. So I'm giving you the permission. And you don't want to fuck around or find out with me because I drop kick you shit to the curb. But that's fine. You're in. Any other thoughts or comments for this meeting and or for the rest of the year? Those are my eyelashes batting, in case you can't see them. David has thumbs up. Damien, since it's your first meeting, is this what you were anticipating or expecting?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Is this what you were participating or expecting?
Yeah, whole bunch of really awesome people just talking a whole bunch of shit to make sense of it and improve things that are going on in our world and our little community. I like it.
Pretty much, that's about it. Okay, well, I am gonna dismiss us 3 minutes early. Don't say I didn't end early. I will email everyone this recording, the information about the next meeting, the topic. My only ask of you is to pretend that you're gonna read your email and then text me if you want in on the next cycle. And Jason, I think you finished the finalizing kind of what a mission draft. So I just want to be able to read it aloud and then that'll be the end. To provide dynamic perspectives that aid the USBG in its ongoing operations. The FSU does that by its focus on past, current, and proposed structures, policies, and dynamics. The ongoing goal is the continued success and development of the organization and its members. So I think Damien gives a thumbs up. I'm giving a thumbs up. That sounds like an excellent thing to forward along to whoever the hell that might be. And we'll see what happens. So thank you all for a very productive meeting. High five. Golf claps to you all. Love you. Except for you, Raul. Just kidding. I know. And for everyone, happy National Coming Out Day. It's 10/11, October 11th. Okay, loves and kisses, and I will be in touch with meeting minutes and suchness.
All right. Have a
Bye,
good
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.